Hi, I thought I'd share with you some lessons that I learnt recently at a time when I realised there was a real possibility that I was going to die. I guess the story begins at 4 a.m. one morning a few months ago when I was in such massive pain and having such difficulty breathing that I felt that there was no option but to ring the ambulance. Um, this followed from a previous visit to the hospital when I tripped while running. I run every day and I tripped while avoiding a car and landed heavily on a concrete curb and fractured three ribs and punctured my lung. This lung, the ribs had healed and or were well healing well, and so things were going well. Then I was bitten by a dog and ended up back in hospital and had to have surgery for that. But here I was a third time, uh, forced to had no option but to ring the ambulance. I'd been coughing all day long, all night long for the previous month, and nothing I could do could clear whatever the obstruction was that was causing the cough. And I was getting weaker and weaker because I hadn't been able to sleep, I hadn't been able to eat because of the coughing. I tried everything I could to alleviate the coughing, but nothing worked. And so here I was, desperate, um, and calling the ambulance. I was quite sure that I'd refractured the ribs with all my coughing, and so that was adding to the pain. When the ambulance arrived, they ended up putting me in a COVID screening ward because they weren't sure that the problem wasn't a respiratory problem. It was possibly COVID related. So it wasn't until they were sure that it wasn't COVID related that I was able to be put into a more normal ward. Um, so I was totally isolated from everybody, and the nurses and doctors had to wear full PPE to when they came to see me. So I was very lonely, I guess. But worst of all was just the incessant coughing and being unable to breathe. I thought once I was reached hospital that they'd find something pretty quickly to ease the pain or to prevent the coughing, but there was nothing they could do other than surgery, and there was no bed available in the respiratory wing. So I was getting really desperate. I've normally got a pretty strong resilience, but was starting to feel so weak, and I was just begging the doctors. I was saying to them, look, I don't have the reserves to keep going because I was just so incredibly weak from a month of coughing, not sleeping, not eating, and would have these coughing fits, which would make it worse, and was unable to breathe while I was having these coughing fits. So I was at a very low ebb, and that was when I realised that maybe I wasn't going to get through this. This is a video that I wouldn't normally make. I've been encouraged to do so by a friend who felt that some of the things that I learnt at this time might be useful to others. And given my mission in life is to pass on the things that I learn that I find helpful, pass them on to others, it seems appropriate to make this video. It turned out that I was suffering from very serious pneumonia, which had associated complications, which involved about 3 litres of fluid building up in the space between my lungs and my rib cage, and that was what was pressing on the broken ribs and also on my lungs, causing the coughing. Um, I had one more simple operation to try and enable the doctors and nurses to drain this infected fluid away from my lung and from my chest, but that didn't work. And it wasn't until I had a much more major operation that slowly we were able to drain the fluid. It took quite a few weeks and also several courses of antibiotics. So I had to lie absolutely flat on my back for several weeks and became very weak. I lost 9 kilograms in weight, which I think was mainly muscle, and was so weak that I even had difficulty going to the toilet. So yeah, I reached a pretty low state. So my friend asked me, what was it that helped you get through this time? And I think this is where perhaps a valuable learning might lie. Um, the first and the most important thing was connection. My connection to my friends and family, to the doctors and nurses. I reckon there's probably about 30 doctors and nurses that cared for me over the time I was in hospital. Um, my friends, family, doctors, nurses, it was just amazing. I my family members would often text me if they couldn't ring me. They'd text me. I'd be text. In fact, I had trouble talking, so I couldn't even talk on the phone. So to begin with, there were no phone calls for quite a while. But then, even then, I'd get text messages, and I'd have to read them like flat on my back, because I had to lie flat on my back for weeks, because if I sat up at all, I'd start coughing. So it was a connection to the people, to other people, that meant so much to me. There was one time when I was being wheeled into for the major surgery, when a junior doctor held my hand. And it sounds trivial, but I can't tell you how much that meant to me. There was another time when a senior nurse came up and gave me a really big hug, and that too was just so powerful. So connection was incredibly important, and I think we tend to take our connection and relationships for granted, but understand that these can be life-saving. They are really, really important, and it's not until the chips are really down that you can realize just how precious they are. The next lesson, I think, was the question of gratitude. I've always been, I think, a fairly grateful person, but I was incredibly grateful to the doctors and the nurses. I'm unbelievably grateful for the medical system that was supporting me in this way. I mean, we've got surely the world's best medical system here in Australia. Um, I was grateful for the love and support that I was getting from my friends and family, which was just absolutely outstanding. Gratitude is actually a very powerful emotion. It's something that can be overlooked a bit. We tend to talk about love a lot, but love can be complicated, because love can also be associated with hurt, and gratitude doesn't have that complication. And in fact, some experiments I've done with biofeedback has proven to me that gratitude is actually a more powerful and more healing emotion than any other. So I was very, very grateful, and I think because I was grateful, I think that the nurses picked up on that, the nurses and doctors, and they responded really well to that, because I suspect they probably don't get as much gratitude as they deserve. In fact, it was amazing. At the end of it all, I said to one of the doctors, "Thank you so much for what you've done to me. I can't tell you how grateful I am." And the doctor said back to me, "Thank you for letting us care for you." So that was incredibly powerful. So gratitude was really important factor. And another really important factor was the fact that I feel I've got a lot more to achieve in my life. I've got a lot more that I've got to do. So it's not time to go yet. So eventually I was discharged from a hospital, and it was so weak I couldn't even walk out to the front gate. But slowly but surely I got stronger. And so now, after about a little over 2 months, I'm able to run 4 kilometres pretty well pain-free. Not very fast, I must say, but I feel that I'm healing at a really great rate. And that's in spite of the fact that the doctors said that they thought it would take 6 to 12 months for me to get back to where I was. I'm not there yet, but I'm well on the way. So how did I do that? Well, as soon as I felt strong enough, I started walking. I walked very short distances, because really just around the backyard. I couldn't walk very far at all. But every day I made a point of just walking just as much as I felt I was able to. Some days it was a bit longer, and some days it was shorter. Because I've been running for so many years, I'm used to monitoring my body and observing and knowing what to push through and what not to push through. But eventually I reached the point after I think about a month of walking that I felt I could try running. So I ran a very, very short distance, very, very slowly. And it felt as if I only had one lung, and that lung was absolutely burning as I ran. So breathing was very, very hard. But slowly but surely, I would combine running and walking. In fact, now I run, up to 4Ks around lunchtime. And then in the evening, I'll go for a walk, which might be up to 4Ks as well. So I'm combining the two forms of exercise to build up my strength. Um, so the lesson from this was that to practice, to work consistently, really consistently, was the lesson in how to get over this. In fact, one incentive I have is I keep this chart, this simple little diary, where the coloured squares indicate whether I've run or just walked, and how far I've run and how far I've walked and how fast I've run. And I try to make sure that I colour in every square one way or the other, either with a run and a walk, or just a walk or just a run. Um, so what were the lessons overall, just to summarise them? When your back is to the wall, just the things to remember are your connection to others, how valuable and precious that is, your to experience and feel gratitude. There is always something that you can be grateful for, no matter where you are, no matter how bad things are. I'm sure you can always find something to be grateful for. And then to realise that there's a lot more you can do with your life. It's not time to go yet, that's for sure. And to recover quickly from a setback, careful, consistent action is really helpful and is what helped me. So I hope some way that this is helpful to somebody, the lessons that I learned. And I'm going really well, so nobody's got to worry. But yeah, so thank you for listening.